we're going to orient ourselves into a different direction. First of all, I will create a new level, basic level as well. I just want to have an empty space. And now the section we are going to check in modeling. Select this. Let me add a very simple box and place it here. Accept. Before using the rest of the tools for modeling, I wish to visit the section of the attributes, because this is something that we are going to use for the rest of the tools. So the attributes let's start with inspect, and this will present you the basic information about the mesh that you are creating. At this moment, as you can see in this mesh, this is the most basic box that we can create as a static mesh. Let's create another mesh, but in this case, I'm going to add it as a box, but let me create it a bit bigger. Let's say something that could be 400 in height. Okay. And now you can see, if we compare these two objects by using their attributes, you can see the structure is basically the same thing between these two. If you see how the triangles are presented to create the geometry, they are basically the same thing. Now let's make a small change. Let's say that I created a new box like the previous one, but in this case, I wish to add some subdivisions. So this was introduced at the beginning, but we're going to make some changes as we explore other options to alter our meshes. Let's say at this moment that I want to create, let's say 5, 5, and 5 subdivisions. So in width, in depth, and in height, which is basically X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to accept. Now, if we check the attributes and inspect, you see that this has a lot more geometry than the other objects that were selected here. And this is a big differentiation if we want to transform, to change this object in some ways. With objects with less geometry, we're going to be very limited to transform this object. But as we add more geometry, the possibilities expand. Let me accept this one. Also, if you select the object and go to the attributes to inspect, you have several options to inspect at this moment. Let me remove this, which are the default active. And you can see, for example, one that we use a lot, which is the normals. And the normals are perpendicular lines that are positioned respect to the surface of the face of the mesh. And we're going to use this a lot, because in the moment that we change, that we transform this mesh, these normal vectors will keep a position and will transform, will rotate with the ways that we're going to transform the object. The other that sometimes I use are the tangent vectors, which are related besides the normals that are perpendiculars, these are tangent. They're touching the corners of the sides, and literally they are creating a parallel line to that particular point, as you can see here in this example. Depending on what you want to inspect on the mesh, you can select different options that are presented here. And this gives us a lot of information. Now, in the same section of the attributes, let's talk about the normals. This is a part of the inspection of the attributes that allows you to play with the normals in case that your normals are presented in the direction that is not exactly what you want. At this moment, the normals to be rendered, the normals should point perpendicular to the surface that is going to be rendered, which we inspect just a moment ago when we get to the attributes, and in the inspection, we select the normal vectors. So you can see all these vectors are moving away perpendicular to the surface. Now, let's say that in the same weight of the attributes, we want to play with the normals, but it turns out that one normal is not correct, or this object has all the normal backwards. Well, we can invert the normals. And as you can see here now, we have all things that will be rendered, but inside the object, not outside the object. This happens because usually the surfaces are going to be rendered, because we want to save memory, rendered on just one side. So what you're seeing here, what you're presenting with here, is a side that is not rendered, even though it is there, because we are seeing, our point of view is from the inner side of this normal. So in case that this happened, is because that the normals of one side, one part of the object or the entire object is wrong. So you have to invert the normals. So even though this is a tool that we don't use a lot because you don't get to these inconsistencies very often, it's important that you know that it is here. Another similar attribute to normals are the tangents. If we select tangents, you are going to be able to see the tangents of the object. Let me reduce the speed of the camera because I think it's too fast at this moment. So here you can see the tangents of the object, and you can also inspect the normals. In fact, you can define how big you want these lines to be, or the thickness of these lines if they are not clear enough for you. These again are elements of the inspection that will help you in the future when you have to identify how this mesh, how the sides of this mesh are behaving. The next part on this section that I want to cover very quickly is the one related to the LOD manager. So when you select an object, you will have the option eventually to, depending on the distance from the object, to control the number of vertices or triangles that you want to render on the scene. But I haven't at this moment find a way to enable these options and to control that. And I think that the reason behind this is the fact that now with Unreal 5, we're starting to use nanites. And the possibilities of enabling nanites will handle how the rendering is going to be based on the distance. And I think that for the games of the new generation of video games, that is going to be a thing of the past, where we're going to specify the level of distance, which is the LOD, for the specific objects, because it's going to be handled automatically thanks to tools as the nanite. If you want to get more information about the nanites, I'm providing you a link on this section for an explication of why nanite is a so important game changer element of technology in Unreal 5. I recommend you to visit it, to subscribe to the channel of YouTube, because I'm constantly offering this kind of content for you as well.